Hey guys, this is my Mod 8 assignment case study. So, first thing, identify the problem. What do I know? I know that first and foremost, Carl has emotional outbursts in class. He has a history of self abuse. He's definitely a special needs student. He does have an IEP and a behavior plan with consequences and rewards, which doesn't seem to be working anymore. He does have a tough home life. His parents are going through a testy divorce. They are separated. They live in separate homes. Mom kind of takes the kids because he's got two older siblings. Mom takes the kids, and dad is left working. There's a first year new special ed teacher, Mrs. Susan Green, and then the 10-year classroom teacher, veteran teacher, Mrs. Nancy Taylor. She wants him removed from class immediately. No ifs and buts about it. So a couple of things. What do I need to know? I need to know what's causing his behaviors to become more violent, his outbursts to become more violent and more of a risk to others. And if it is a risk, is his violent behavior a risk to the safety of adults and students, or does the teacher just feel uncomfortable? Because it's a bigger district, not in terms of money, but in terms of schools and space, and they have a limited resources. Are the resources available for a one-to-one aid? And what extra resources, whether it's a counselor, a psychologist, more aides, can be provided to help Carl. And the problem basically is, what resources can our district offer to intervene and help Carl without removing him from the classroom and denying him the same education as everyone else, but also at the same time making sure that his classroom teacher is on board with everything. So my plan of action, I got 5 of them. Special ed teacher, Mrs. Green, she needs to tweak his IEP and make sure that there is, maybe he sits in front of the room or in the back room, wherever it seems to be that he's not going to disrupt the classroom environment. But also tweak the IEP so that he has a dedicated time to see a school psychologist. The special ed teacher should meet with Carl periodically, maybe once a week. And just try to figure out what outside factors are causing him to escalate his behavior. Is there a trigger from the teacher? Is it inside the classroom, or is he having problems outside the classroom that's seeping into the classroom? Someone, whether it's a sped teacher, an aide, maybe the director of special ed, the psychologist, should sit in on the classes and observe his behavior. And again, I would provide a one-to-one aid for him. I would find the resources and the staff and provide a one-to-one aid. The special ed teacher should also meet with Carl's teacher and inform her that she isn't, we're not going to pull him out of class. You need to figure it out, and you need to work with him and work with me. And finally, determine how bad Carl's home situation is, and maybe call it, supposed to say CPS right there. CPS intervene or do a random welfare check just to make sure, he's getting fed at home, clothes are clean, just basically a random welfare check. And how I'm going to implement these changes. So first and foremost, I want to set up a meeting with all the stakeholders involved, with mom and dad, the classroom teacher, the director of special ed, the assistant superintendent, psychologist, a resource teacher, to consult and discuss what options we have. Then I'm going to have him reevaluated and weekly or more meetings with a psychologist to kind of determine, okay, what is the issue, what's the trigger, and how can we solve that? Have parents come back to discuss the findings with the psychologist to determine the best course of action, because if we're going to make a change to his IEP or something along those lines, they're going to need to know about it. We're going to review a new behavior plan over the next few weeks with either one-to-one aid reporting back or the SPED teacher sitting in on his classes. If the consequence and rewards chart's not working, we're going to have to find a different behavior plan to use. And finally, if he is about to have an outburst, and you can see that, and right now we actually have an emotionally disturbed student, and what really works for him is just when he's getting riled up, quick cool down walk. The one-to-one aid will take him out of the room. So I thought that would be a good idea too, a quick cool down walk when the outburst starts, and bring him back in so you don't disrupt education for everybody. So in order to resolve the issues, what's best for all students, you need less interruptions from Carl, and all students will have access to a better education with less interruptions from him, and maybe a healthier support system both at home and at school. I think the classroom teacher needs to do a better job of trying to reach Carl, not just try to throw him out of the room or I'm not teaching him, but find what you can get him, how he can calm down, or what's his trigger so you can avoid that. He's essentially crying out for help. There's something going on. And most likely it's the disruption to his home life. Most likely it's, dad moving out. He lives with mom. So it's going to be something along those lines, but find out how, what outside factors are affecting him and how can we fix that. Maybe he just needs to talk about his problems with the psychologist. When we can open up and talk about his problems, possibly his outburst might cease. But also importantly, the classroom teacher and the SPED teacher have to be on the same page. They're clashing right now, and they need to come together. She can't, the classroom teacher, yes, she's a 10-year vet, and yes, the SPED teacher, it's her first year, but she can't try to one-up the SPED teacher and overrule her and tell her how to do her job, and vice versa. So they're going to have to get on the same page. The problem, if I'm going to debrief it, is the classroom teacher went from 0 to 100 real fast. She escalated everything. So I would like to see how she reacts with Carl in class. Does she egg him on a little bit? If he's starting to get a little testy, does she yell at him and escalate his behaviors? But she did not give any warnings, have documentation, any of that about his escalating behaviors over the course of a month, 2 months, 3 months. So there's no documentation, there's no proof that his actions are escalating. It's just, her word. Definitely think the SPED teacher should have been provided a mentor. She might be really good at her job, but it's her first year, and she's replacing somebody that had been there for 25, 26, 7 years. So she definitely needs a mentor teacher and somebody that can help groom her into that position. She should stand her ground. She stood her ground and defended her belief that Carl should not be removed. So I thought she did a really good job with that. It would have been easy for her to become intimidated, but the parents are too entirely focused on fighting, on, let me just sign this and I can get to work. They got to be focused on Carl, and everybody needs to be on the same page and do what's best for him. Unresolved issues for me. There's no administration in the building. There's an assistant administrator, assistant superintendent, but that's also a teacher and has a full course load. So, you need an administrator in the building, a principal, a superintendent, somebody, and you need more support staff. And I think that's a big hindrance. The district is entirely too big. The resources are stretched too thin. Again, I don't know how I would fix that. That's more at a political level and a governmental level, but, it is too big. It's 800 miles. And finally, with his next outburst, which is going to happen, how is she going to react? Is she going to talk him down, or is she going to rile him up? So Category 5, Standard 1, promoting the academic success of all students. First of all, we offered services such as a one-to-one aide within the classroom for Carl, not just for him, but also to appease the teacher. Maybe that would calm her down a little bit. And also, there for the other students to make sure, hey, if Carl getting out of control, we can just go over and talk to him, and the classroom teacher doesn't have to interrupt her lesson. Community with the classroom teacher, our plan for intervention, and that we weren't going to stick Carl into a resource room. We're going to provide him with the least restrictive environment, and he really needs to be in class with inclusion. Going to offer time for him to meet with a school psychologist, and also have a special ed teacher kind of observe the class and how it's run, or an administrator observe it, and just see how maybe she deals with, Mrs. Taylor deals with all students. Personal well-being, this was my big thing. We're definitely going to have meetings with Carl's parents, consultation with the school psychologist. I think a school psychologist at this point would be the most important. Talk to him about his home situation and determined whether CPS was appropriate, calling them Child Protective Services was appropriate or not for the welfare check. Discussed with the teacher how her outburst might also trigger Carl's to become more violent. Again, instead of getting him going, talk him down a little bit. And finally, put a one-to-one aide in Carl's class for a couple reasons. But again, in case he became violent and might need to be physically restrained, a kid or a teacher is not going to do that. And as the educational leader, I enhanced instructional capacity in this in many ways. First of all, I would have provided more support for our SPED team, especially since Susan Green took over for a retired experienced teacher. It was her first year. She needed more support staff there. Somebody maybe just to talk about her issues with. Everything she's seen is going to be for the first time. I thought she handled herself well, but she needed people there. I would have made sure I hired more support staff and assigned her a mentor teacher, a school psychologist, aides, maybe a hall monitor, maybe a resource officer, just somebody in the school. Make sure that SPED has weekly meetings with departments. Make sure there's a constant stream of communication with classroom teachers regarding SPED teachers. Have the special ed or the aides or administrators make sure that the teachers are following their IEP plans. All right. Also, the big one to me was I felt like Mrs. Taylor was trying to bully and intimidate a younger staff member. So we want to make sure the classroom teachers absolutely do not do that. Okay. If she doesn't like the decision, then she could maybe take it somewhere, but we're not going to try to bully or intimidate somebody into making a decision to pull a kid out of class. And finally, we're going to let staff know that we are following a policy of inclusion. This is not 1970. Okay. This is not 1990 where it's self-contained. Okay. So we're following a policy of inclusion with access to free and appropriate public education for all students, Carl included. All right. If his behaviors do become worse and worse and worse and worse, and we have documentation and we can back it up, legally back it up, then, for example, then we could approach that with, we might have to go for a resource room or something like that. But in the meantime, we're going with this policy of inclusion.